Hello, I'm Gwen Hill at Pine Ridge Baptist Church Sunday School Department Ladies Class, and we are studying the book of Revelation. This has been a wonderful study for me. I hope you've enjoyed it as well. We are going to do part of chapter 4 today, but if we'll pick back up, let's look at it and see what Jesus gave us an outline that I want to read to you. It's in chapter 1, verse 19. Jesus is speaking, and he's speaking to John. He says, John, write the things which thou hast seen, and the things which are, and the things which shall be hereafter. The things he has seen is from Revelation 1 through Revelation 20. The things that are is the letter to the 7 churches. John has been a mentor to these 7 churches. He knows these people. He knows their good points and their bad points. He is acting as a scribe, taking down everything that Jesus says in letter form to send to each one of these churches. These 7 churches also have threefold meaning. One is John is to send it to the church. They will have it in hand, real people with a real letter from Jesus Christ to them, telling them how they need to improve, what they're doing right and what they're not doing well at all, and even to one church to alert them to the fact you're a dead church, but there's still hope for you. And to another church that was doing so badly, he said, I wish you were hot or cold. As it is, you're lukewarm, and I just want to spew you out of my mouth. That's the first reason. The second reason is each letter is ended by saying, those who have an ear to hear, let them hear what the Spirit has said to the churches. That is for you and for me to take internally, to take personally, to study those letters and say, what is this church to do with me? Can I find myself in this church? Am I doing what Christ wants me to do? Do I need to be corrected in this way or that way? Oh, am I a dead church? Am I lukewarm? And then listen what Jesus says to do to correct any problems or to take encouragement that he sees what we're going through and what we're doing. Or the third is it's the way they're laid out exactly parallels the age of the church years. You have the age of the apostolic to start with. That's when John was still alive. But when he dies, it becomes the age of persecution. And they go right on. The 7 different ages of the church to where now the main drives that are out there with the churches, the church age is the age of Philadelphia and the church of Laodicea. So are you a member of either one of those churches? Does the profile that Jesus gives in chapter 3 define you? Can you find yourself in that? So he has finished dictating those letters. So today we're starting in chapter 4. Okay. So Jesus is speaking. John is writing. If you have a red letter Bible, you'll notice that it goes from red to black now. Jesus was dictating before. Now it's John is writing what he's seeing and what he's understanding. If you'll notice, the church is mentioned in chapters 1, 2, and 3. If you'll count them, 19 times. From here until mid-chapter of 22, the church is not mentioned again. From chapter 4, 1 until 22, the middle of 22, the church is not mentioned again. Why? Because the church is not there. Okay? The focus on the first 3 chapters was on the church. From 4 to 22, the focus is on those left behind and what's happening. chapters 4 and 5 are introducing you to what's going on in heaven. And then in chapter 6, we start talking about the rapture, the great rapture, what's going on earth. God's last effort to pull people to him. You know, some people can be brought to Jesus gently. Some resist a little bit. And some, it's just a real struggle to get them to the throne room so that they meet Jesus because they're so defiant. Our God's a loving God. And this last part is trying to tell you exactly how loving he is, what he goes through to call us to him. After this I looked, and behold, a door was opened in heaven, and the first voice which I heard was, as it were, a trumpet talking with me, which said, Come up hither, and I will show thee things which must be hereafter. And immediately I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne was set in heaven, and one sat on the throne, and he that sat was to look upon like a jasper and a sardine stone, and there was a rainbow round about the throne, the side like unto an emerald. John has been taking furiously scribing for Jesus in these letters, and he's an old man. He's in his mid-90s. I can almost envision him leaning over with his stylus in his hand as he's taking down furiously what Jesus is telling him. And I teased my Sunday school class when we were studying Moses on top of the mountain, getting the plans for the tabernacle and the 10 Commandments from God. I said, I can imagine if I had been Moses saying, oh, wait a minute, God, wait a minute. Let me read this back to you. Make sure I got it right. This would have been quite a chore, a wonderful thing to do, but I can imagine John's stress. And John has been with stylus in hand, ready to write more. And there's a span of a few seconds or longer where Jesus is just quiet. And like you would do or I would do, we would look up to see what the speaker was doing now. And after he'd taken down these 7 letters, after this, I looked up. And behold, a door was opened in heaven. You know, this door is mentioned twice. Once here and once later in the book when Jesus comes down. The door is open and Jesus comes down. His second coming. So it's open twice. Last week we talked about the picture that was drawn in the 1600s or painted of Jesus standing outside and knocking. And it drew my students' attention to the fact that the original painting did not have a doorknob. Why is that? That's because Jesus won't open the door and come in on you. He comes by invitation. He'll knock, and he's waiting on you from the inside to open the door. See what John sees? The door's already open. Jesus is on the inside. John is out, and he's saying, come here. Come here. That door is open. What a wonderful thing. And he says, the first voice I hear was like a trumpet. Remember, John is in 1st century, and he's trying his best to tell you and me what he's hearing, what he's seeing, what's going on with him, and he's in heaven. He's never experienced anything like this before, and he's never spoke to anyone who has experienced anything like this before. So he's got to come up with a whole new vocabulary to share that with you and to share that with me. You know, when the rapture happens, the horn's going to blow. The trumpet's going to sound. My granddaughter used to play the trumpet. I love those strong, authoritative, sharp notes. And as you dwell into a study about that trumpet, lots of our military in ages past and even today have certain things that they recognize the trumpet is telling them to do. They play taps at night when it's time to go to bed. They play reveille when it's time to attack. Not so much today with that, but they did in times past. At our church, when our Sunday school time is almost over, there's a bell that rings. And after 7 or 8 minutes, it rings again. One time it's, hey teachers, it's time for you to finish. Wind it up. And the second bell is, it's time to come to the auditorium. Give them time to get out of your class and get to the auditorium for worship hour. When that bell rings, we know exactly what it means, what it's telling us. The voice of that bell at that time in the morning, we know exactly what that bell means. John heard this trumpet, and it immediately got his attention, as every trumpet that ever blows gets people's attention. And then he heard a voice that said to him, come up hither. When the rapture occurs, we're going to hear a trumpet blast, and we're going to hear a holler. We're going to hear a call. We're going to hear a shout. You know what I think that shout's going to be? Come up here. Come up here. What a wonderful thing it's going to be. What a wonderful thing it's going to be to meet Jesus in the air. But he said he heard that trumpet. He knew what it meant, and he heard the voices, come up hither. I've got a mission for you, John. Come up here. I'm going to show you the things that are going to happen from this point forward. Remember back in verse 19 of chapter 1, I told you I wanted you to write the things that you'd already seen, the things that are right now, and the things to be. Well, this is going to be where you're going to stay safe and secure to see the things that be. Come up here, John. In verse 2, he says, and immediately I was in the Spirit, and behold, the throne was set in heaven, and one sat on the throne. And immediately, in the twinkling of an eye. Do you know how long it takes to get a twinkle in the eye? It's the reflection of the speed of light striking your eye, your pupil, and bouncing back out 1/10,000th of a second. In the twinkling of an eye. Just immediately, this old man found himself off of the Isle of Patmos, found himself in the very throne room of heaven. How did he get there? He doesn't know. And if I had John here and I said, John, how did you do that? John goes, I don't know. I was in the Spirit. God did it. God did it. I don't know. But it did. God was there. God did it. Immediately I was in the Spirit, and behold, the very first thing that took John's eye, the first thing that caught his attention was that throne. Oh, how magnificent it must have been. The very first thing that caught his attention was the throne. It was set in heaven. Now, if you're reading your Bible, a throne was S-E-T, set in heaven. You know, his Jewish readers, and you and I, after we studied a little bit, what an important word that word is, S-E-T, that's set in heaven. He could have just as easily said a throne in heaven. Why did he choose to say the word set? Child, it's set, S-E-T, in heaven. It's set in heaven. Because the Israelites were a whole lot like us, or we're a whole lot like them. You see, we have a problem with idols, things that take our attention away from God himself, things that stand between us and our worship, things that divert our attention from God and his word and how he wants us to live our lives. All of those things that take your attention away, that divert your attention, that make you look somewhere else are idols. Remember Rachel? She was leaving Daddy's house and she was mad at him, so she stole his idols. She put them on a camel. She sat on them. They were mobile. Most of their idols were mobile. If they wanted to go somewhere, they just packed up their idols and took them with them. The Israelis longed for permanency. They longed for a God that was set and that was permanent. And one of the first things John wanted to reassure him was, he said, and the throne was set. John in an instant knew from the dawn of eternity to the... there is no end of eternity, but all right, no beginning either. But throughout eternity, that throne had been in the same place. It was set. What a message he's sending. The throne was set in heaven, and one sat on that throne. And he had no doubts who he was. No doubts whatsoever. And he begins by wanting to tell you and to tell me what the one sitting on the throne looked like. And it is beyond his vocabulary. It would be beyond mine. But he tries. He tries so hard. He looks at the one sitting on the throne, and the one sitting on the throne is light himself. How do you describe light? Wonderful, beautiful light that when you look at God himself, well, he tries. John said it was like jasper and sardis stone. Jasper, you know, our words change. As cultures change, words change, what they mean change. And most commentaries believe that this reference to jasper is actually referring to what we call today a diamond. That it is described elsewhere in the book as being a transparent stone. So we think it was a diamond. If you're looking at a diamond ring, someone's got a big diamond on their ring, dependent on the size, the way it was cut, the clarity of the stone, if you hold it up to the light and wiggle your hand, there's just going to be almost like sparks. It will shine so brilliantly. He's seeing that brilliance, that sparkle, that shine, that clear, clean, white light, the purity of that light. He is seeing that emanating from that throne. And the only thing he can think of, the only thing I've seen that even comes close to that light would be the sparkle of a diamond. The sparkle of a diamond. And then he says there was a sardine stone, a sardis or a sardine stone. And today our commentaries are telling me that that is a blood red ruby that's been polished and faceted, plains cut, and it was striking off red beams. Can you imagine John as he looks toward the throne and the bright sparkle of the white light interspersed with it the red? What would that red light symbolize? What would that red shimmer, that red sparkle, that red glimmer, what would it? It stands for the blood of Christ. For the sacrifice of blood, Jesus Christ made a way for you and for me by shedding his blood, and that's commiserate of that. That was in God's plan from the beginning. And now when you look at God, you can't look at God without looking through the blood of Jesus Christ. You look at him and you're going to look through that red, symbolic light. There's another color. Did you catch it? He said, and there was a rainbow round the throne. The rainbows that we see here on earth are most of the time, they're 180, they're an arc, and it's like 180 from horizon to horizon. Sometimes you just see a partial one. It's extremely rare to see a 360. This is a 360 rainbow. What did the rainbow originally, what was it? Put in the sky as proof of a promise, right? God keeps his promises. Every one he ever makes, he keeps, and especially in regard to Jesus. Every single promise is kept. That rainbow. But there's something unusual about this rainbow as it goes around the throne. Did you see what John said? John looks at it and he says, that band of light makes me think of a rainbow, but it's green. It's green. Why would it be green? What does green mean in Jewish literature? What do they think green stands for? Like white stands for purity and red stands for sacrifice. What does green stand for? For grace. Do you notice if it's around the throne, the only way you can get to God is through God's grace? How wonderful is that? How wonderful is that? I wrote on the board for my classes, Roy G. Biv. That's red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. If you ever want to know the colors of a rainbow that we see here on earth, and probably the rainbows that you may see in heaven, but the rainbow, the bow, the band of light that's around the throne is green. For grace. God's grace. His wonderful, wonderful grace that stretches all the way around the throne. And that's how you and that's how I can get to God. Is to go through the grace of God himself. Our lesson next time will be to finish up chapter 4. It'll be verses 4 through 11. And it's exciting reading about the characters that we're learning about there. Something that I neglected to say that I want to bring back out is over on chapter 4, verse 2, when it said, and immediately. That word in the Greek, harpazo, and in Greek it means snatching away. And if you go to a Latin Vulgate Bible, they translate it and put the word rapture there. So if someone says, oh, the word rapture is not even in the Bible, yes it is. Did you know the word Bible is not in the book? Did you know that the word Trinity is not in the book? And we subscribe to those. We know that those are true, although the words aren't in the Bible. This is rapture. And it's a matter of translation. If you look back on the original Greek, that word means snatching away. Are you ready to be snatched away? Let's see if I've got something else up here that I forgot to tell you. No. Just to remind you, John was the first person raptured, and he is an illustration of the church. This is telling us through John a type of what is going to happen. John is representing the church here, and he was raptured up into church. Immediately he was in the presence of God himself. And someday that trumpet's going to sound. I hope you have a good week. Enjoy. See you next week.